All right, here we go. This is the System Failure Podcast number 31. How's it going, Nate?
Hey, Brian. Good. It is feeling like springtime here in beautiful Portland, Maine. We have the mercury brushing the 60-degree mark for the first time in 2024. So it really, and we got the NHL playoffs starting this week. And usually when the NHL playoffs start is when the buds pop up on the trees, so we're looking for those. You might even see a bush or a shrub that's already showing buds at this early date. So it's nice to be moving into the summertime. Really, I mean, Maine is absolutely beautiful and summer, fall, and winter, but the spring is a horrible, brutal season here. It's usually muddy, and it's not like slushy, and it's rainy and not snowy. So it's the opposite of picturesque. Lots of brown snowbanks. Usually we didn't get much snow this year. So it's really good to be moving forward into the summer, as mentioned, because we're getting back to the time when Maine really shines in her natural scenic splendor.
Where does that "Beware the Ides of Spring" come from?
The Ides of March?
Or is it the Ides of March?
Yeah, so the Ides, the 15th of the month, is always it's always supposed to be a time, particularly the Ides of March, are supposed to be a time of great flux. And now I'm really struggling. I think it's because it was that era when the administrative offices of the Roman Empire turned over. But whatever the case may be, the famous prophecy, the soothsayer says to Caesar on his way, to the theater where he would suffer his assassination in 44 BC. In the days leading up to that incident, a soothsayer says to Caesar, Caesar, beware the Ides of March, because of course it's March the 15th, 44 BC is the date that Caesar got the business stabbed by the Brutus and the Senate.
I see. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to some warm weather, and we had a few more winter weather events, which are a problem for me and my job. But now we've got Iran is sending missiles at Israel. Yeah. And, the price of Bitcoin took a bit of a tumble, although it didn't. It's still over 60, so,
Well, so first of all, about the Ides of March, I'd be remiss here if I didn't mention that was the date I chose to propose to Tracy, my beautiful fiance. And, it was just, we just were in Florence, and it just all worked out. So I could choose the 15th. And I really thought that the Beware the Ides of March thing was a hilarious joke. Tracy, not so amused by the joke, but still, that one's for me. That's okay.
Nice.
So the big news is the Iran-Israel thing. And I, too, was watching the price of Bitcoin, trying to figure out what was going on. And it wasn't until I flipped over to the news, I was like, oh, okay, this is a World War III scare thing. So I bought another 1,200 in Bitcoin on the way down, which is it's a little hair-raising buying Bitcoin when the price is plummeting, but it's comforting when it finds that landing at some point, finds its footing at some point, and you... the longer I've been trading on Robinhood, the more you learn that you just kind of have to sell when your instincts say buy and buy when your instincts say sell, and that's how you can turn a dollar on that.
That is the name of the game, man. Well, World War III, I think, is bad for the outlook of Bitcoin in the short term, but I think definitely good for the outlook of Bitcoin in the long term. So
the coinage has a halving next week, So we should see some exciting moves in the price this week.
I mean, one thing is that I think people have been talking about the halving for a while, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little unenthusiasm immediately when it happens. Similarly,
that's what I remember from last time. Yeah,
the price also went down when past it got to be part of IRAs or whatever. There was that they opened up some legislation
EFTs,
on it.
Exchange traded ETFs, exchange traded funds. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, it kind of went down, but then it also went up to 70.
Yeah, there was a lag. Yeah, I was thinking. Well, it took a jump that day. Then there was a bunch of profit taking, and the price sagged. And but then it eventually came around. So I think you're exactly right. I think that's what we'll see in the weeks after the halving. I also think that 2020 or the first half of 2024 will be your last chance to buy the coinage. It's in the 60s. I think we'll be above that for a while. Just based on the halving plus the increased volume from the new ETFs alone. We'll see. I think at least in the short term, I think the coinage is totally the best place to be in the moment, in the wonderful world of investments. It seems like the stock market it seems like stocks and bonds are bubbling again. But gold is popping. That's another one. Not as much as Bitcoin's been popping, but gold's a little more stable and reaching all-time highs. So that's also an interesting development. Maybe it'd be worth buying some of those gold miner ETFs.
Well, it's just hard to have faith in the American dollar.
Yeah.
I don't know, what kind of, how much wool you'd have to pulled over your eyes.
Yeah, you just kind of hold your nose and hold the U.S. dollar at this point, or you at least want to hold like the sovereign debt, not rather than the dollars itself, the treasury bonds, so that you're not just totally taking a bath. But
man, I'll tell you what, dude. I went to the food court, at the main mall with a few coworkers on like Thursday, and dude, it was just a grim scene, dude. Just like everyone in there like looked really like not well, and.
This is midday on Thursday. This is the middle of the workday. So the people who are, it's not going to be mostly people at lunch, right? It's going to be the people who are unemployed.
That is true. I guess it's not Maine's like best and brightest, but just the number of people who looked like extremely unwell was too damn high.
The mall seems so diseased. The main mall used to be a prime hangout location when I was in high school. It had all beautiful stores, and the place was popping. And like at Christmas time, you couldn't fit a car into the parking lot there. But that's not been the case. It's a combination of the internet and just declining health of the economy overall has really served to destroy the main mall experience.
Well, I was explaining to my boss that this is what the CIA wants. Like weak people. We don't want, strong families who own homes where the women can stay home and, the family can live off a single income. They want everyone, sick and weak and out of their mind.
They want everyone with a half dozen medication subscriptions every month, and both parents at work, so you can charge the MAC, get both incomes on that mortgage application. Yeah.
Well, if you want to see a microcosm of the sadness of America, just go to the food court around lunchtime during the week there.
Well, Brian, before we get into World War III here, I guess we should recap the recent appearance of Chris on the podcast, Chris the Libertarian, which I thought was like highly amusing. At least I really enjoyed myself. It was great having a little bit of fresh ideological blood or fresh ideas, a fresh set of thoughts in the mix. So that was nice. It kind of mixed things up, stirred things up a bit here. So I thought it was very entertaining. What did you think?
I mean, my recollection is that Chris said that we were pocket libertarians and that we said he was a pocket, Marxist. So...
See, the libertarians are interesting to me. Now, as I mentioned in the last pod, the idea here would be to take the constellation of ideas that is system failure and craft them into a vehicle that's so aerodynamic that it can jump from mind to mind like a virus and spread. And trying to make the ideas here, like the libertarians, they're at least the von Mises Austrian gold bug libertarian, like Chris Irons, the QTR guy, right? Now these guys can see that the specific nature of Federal Reserve banking means that there's more dollars of debt than actual dollars in the economy at any given time, and that there's only two solutions. There's really only three outcomes. The middle outcome is temporary. You just keep borrowing more money from rich people so you can pay your debts to rich people, right? But that's obviously that's what we've been doing, but that's not a sustainable solution. The other solution is to just allow the rich to own everything. You just all of your wealth concentrates among a tiny minority, or you forgive some of those unpayable debts. Those are the only three roads we can go down. And so, like, you can see where the logic of the understanding of the scam of fractional reserve banking. Like, I should have mentioned it during the pod, but It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart. Remember that movie? That movie perfectly explains fractional reserve lending. Jimmy Stewart's like, well, your money's not here. Your money's in Archie's house, in Jimmy's house, He's meaning that people's bank balances say $1,200, but that money's not really in the bank, right? There's a scam on. And like that, a logical conclusion of that is that there must be debt forgivenesses. Like, you need to split your economic game up into a series, so it's not one game. The one game goes wrong, you still get a series to work with there. So this idea of large scale debt forgiveness, you could almost load it into the libertarian interface. You could almost load it into their mindset in those terms, except for like debt forgiveness means wiping assets off of the balance sheets of the rich, which is like definitely asset foreclosure or asset confiscation. I mean, in the sense that if I promise you $1 million tomorrow and you insist on collecting it, that writing down that debt to my actual ability to what I could actually pay you tomorrow. If you call that asset confiscation, it is, I guess, if you've expressed that promise on a balance sheet in terms of accounts payable. But anyway, you can just see where it was humorous trying to fit the massive elephant of debt forgiveness under the Libertarian Tent, and there's a lot of surprising objects in the Libertarian Tent that you wouldn't think to find there, but boy, is a debt forgiveness a tough one to slide into that ideology. But anyway, overall, super engaging conversation. I'd love to have Chris the Libertarian back on the pod whenever he wants to come on, and I'm sure you'd agree, Brian.
I thought it was a fine discussion. Yeah. I mean, I guess I think debt forgiveness, I mean, this is probably what we talked about on the podcast with Chris, but I mean, we just, like, that kind of authority has to come, well, it's not going to come from like a monarchy, and it's obviously not going to come from the government. We just need like a strong people.
Yeah, we're governed by the bank, so of course we can't have that.
We need to be governing the banks instead of the other way around.
That's it. Yeah, that's the key inversion that needs to happen.
But right now the tail is wagging the dog, and we have to get our power back, right?
Well, we're gonna live in an increasingly more and more farcical. We're going to live with a gradually more farcical economic scoreboard where tiny minorities of us have unfathomable wealth that could never be spent by 100 generations while everyone else tries to scrape by. It's going to get, it's all of the worst parts of the Marxian prophecy, right?
Pretty much. Yeah. Yes, our dystopian future is, happening right before our very eyes.
Yeah, it sure is. All right, well, I guess we can move on from our visit from Chris with the express intent of having the gentleman himself on again very soon. The other thing that happened this past week was the solar eclipse of Monday, April the 8th, 2024. Now, Tracy and I I cut out of work at 12 and we just headed north. We met up with our dad and Kristen and John and her brother Steve, and we drove all the way out to Arrow, New Hampshire. And man, so we here in Portland, Maine, were not in the path of totality. We were close to it, to where you could drive a couple hours to get there, but at 96.4%, you didn't get the real deal here in Portland. And man, now I have sat for partial solar eclipses before, to where the sunlight gets dim and it's a little odd and eerie, and that's about all that happened. But I'd never seen a total solar eclipse before, and it really is a binary experience. You either are seeing the total eclipse or you're not, because with the total eclipse, there's the moment where you take off your eclipse glasses and you see the swirling purple of the umbra and the shining ring of fire that surrounds it. It is really strange. I think the strangeness comes from it's like the ordinary moon and the ordinary sun that we're all seeing in the sky and that we're all familiar with are juxtaposed into this weird alien object in the sky, and the sky is a weird color and the stars are out. And so, in other words, it's not that it's completely alien. You're still standing in Arrow, New Hampshire on the same bridge you were standing on before the eclipse started, but it's this weird juxtaposition between the familiar and the alien that creates a feeling of unease, or an uncanny valley feeling. That was incredibly mystical. I was really surprised how much of a mental impact the total eclipse had versus a measly partial eclipse. So, yeah, definitely it was worth driving a couple hours into totality. Assuming you stayed here, Brian, or surely you would have driven with us, eh?
I had to deal with some work-related things, and how was? Did you see? Were there tons of people where you went?
Well, I wanted to report to you. So it actually it took us a couple hours to get in. You just drive to Bethel and drive to Sunday River and keep going over the New Hampshire border. That's Arrow, New Hampshire, and we got stuck in crazy traffic on the way back. The whole way into Bethel from New Hampshire was just like beep and creep. So the eclipse was at like 3:20. We left about 3:30, 3:45, and we got home at 8. And it only took, and I left at noon, so it gives you a feeling. Let's see, Dad and his crew went some crazy. They went to like Gorham, and they ended up getting home at 11. It was just crazy traffic. But it was it was totally worth it. Trace and I were, for the entire, 4 hours we sat in traffic, we couldn't believe how exciting the eclipse was. I think it has to do with it's like traveling. Like when you get off the airplane in some foreign port of call, and you don't speak the language, and you're like Marcus Brody and Indiana Jones in The Last Crusade. Do you remember that? He's at Iskandarun in Turkey, and I'm sure it's a back lot, but there's chickens, feathers everywhere, and people are carrying their chickens in cages, and people are shouting in foreign languages. And he's like, "Does anybody speak English? Huh?" I remember that. I remember that bit.
I do.
Who could forget it, right? when you get off the plane in a foreign country, it's like you have to tear down your whole, because they're going to have a civilization there, and the people are going to be eating and pooping and meeting friends and loved ones, and going to work, doing the normal civilization things. But it's going to be the same but different. And you can get that same sort of. It's like your reality is just scrambled around a bit. It's not that it's totally foreign, but it's also definitely alien and somewhere in between. So, anyway, I think maybe they call going on a they call visiting a foreign country a trip, and they call eating magic mushrooms a trip, and I would definitely say that seeing the eclipse was a trip, no doubt about it. It was pretty wild. Definitely recommend. Will not be missing any more chances to see a total eclipse. It was really strange. That moment you take off your eclipse glasses and you can look at the thing with your bare eyes is really wild.
I watched some YouTube videos of people enjoying the eclipse. It does seem like it seems like a bit of a festival atmosphere, and I wonder if it being a religious experience to some extent has. Well, it's just interesting, like the Earth and the Sun and the Moon are some kind of like holy trinity, and for some reason, like the Moon always faces the same way, and there's the infamous dark side of the Moon, and the Moon is like just the right size to cause that perfect eclipse, and I don't know what it all means. I mean, maybe it's just has to do with. Like if things were different, then humanity just wouldn't be here because there'd be like no life on Earth or something.
Right. So let's say maybe the tides are the reason that there's life on Earth. Right. You have these tidal pools because the Earth and the Moon are set up the way they are. If there were more moons, we wouldn't have tides like we have. Right. It's because the tides are caused by the gravitational differential between the Sun and the Moon. And so maybe you need to, in order for life to emerge, you need to have like these little tidal pools that, dry out in the sun, but then get a soaking. That's how you get animals maybe from land, from sea into land or something like that, right? This is the sort of theory you're suggesting?
Yeah. We are like sea creatures that have just found our way to land. We have to constantly hydrate to maintain our equilibrium.
Right. My eyes are suspended in water just so they'll work right.
Yeah. And so... I just think probably the eclipse is like honing in on like some greater meaning of like what's really going on here that's harder to grasp, or maybe it all just means nothing. It seems like it probably means something. this crazy experience that we're all having.
The eclipse had me thinking Platonism. It does seem like there's a lot of strange cosmic coincidences that are highlighted by the dance of the planets resulting in the eclipse. But it does. I definitely think something's like we are. I think constructing the universe from our locus of observation out. Right. It's not that there's something going on, something mystical, like you're saying. I can't quite put my finger on it either, but yeah, the eclipse definitely made you reflect on the nature of reality in the universe. I think everyone was doing that, and to put a bow on the eclipse talk, I did want to report to you that many people were playing Dark Side of the Moon, blasting it from their pickup truck speakers so you could be heard as you walk down the streets of Errol, New Hampshire. We heard a couple of them, so that was pretty fun.
That's reassuring. Yeah. And, I guess now that we've had the eclipse, it's time for World War III, huh?
Yep. I mean, right on cue, here come the drones and missiles from Iran to rain down on Israel, and I guess overnight, here on the east coast of the United States, Israel is able to contain or defend itself from that attack with only minor damage here and there. So pretty interesting stuff there. My first thought when reading the news, watching Bitcoin collapse yesterday and reading the news was like, oh, this is it. It's that feeling of, we're going over the top of the roller coaster. I think we ought to get used to that. I think that's the moment in history we are in, much like the fall of Rome or the collapse of medieval society and the subsequent Reformation and Renaissance. But the hero's journey was what really occupied my mind. Like things have to get better, have to get worse in order to get better. We should just expect a certain that it's going to be darkest before the dawn. So I don't know. I think we're going to see a massive rise in chaos, and that's probably going to mean governments declaring war on each other. So yeah, it just felt like things are. It just felt like another click, like another going over the falls in the moment barrel. You get that feeling in your stomach, And in moments like that, you just have to sort of try to keep your faith that things are going to turn out just fine, like they did during all the most disconcerting episodes of history so far. I don't know. How did it make you feel, Brian? Did it make you feel like the clock is 5 seconds to midnight, clicking to 4 seconds to midnight? Did you get that feeling?
I just wonder what it all means. I guess I wonder what's gonna happen. And probably Iran attacking Israel is good for the establishment, or at least the pro-Zionist lobby. Do people feel like we should just let Iran attack Israel?
Yeah, good question. How will this play out for the establishment, the power of the Biden administration? That's a good one. It really depends on Israel's response to this whole thing, because you might think that being attacked like this would increase sympathy for Israel, which has not really been, which I think we had on October the 7th, but then they squandered all that goodwill, just as the U.S. did after 9/11 by their insane asymmetrical response. I guess it all depends on where we go from here. Now, since Israel has so recently squandered its goodwill in terms of public opinion, I don't think it can just get it back by being attacked. Can it? Just so soon? Are we really like a fickle mob, like is portrayed on The Simpsons?
We probably are. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I don't know I can't imagine what we're gonna do or how it's all gonna play out. Probably there's going to be more escalation of some kind.
From a rational standpoint, I really just hope that we can stop supporting Israel, that Hamas can just surrender and have some kind of negotiated settlement, and that whatever it takes to stop people from dying, the Russians and the Ukrainians can have a nice treaty where Russia just gets a chunk of Ukraine. Whatever it is that needs to happen to stop the dying, that's what I should be rooting for. But I find myself perversely pulling a scab off, rooting for the chaos to explode so we can get it over with, so we can move on to whatever new world is going to replace this flagging old one. I wish we could get on with it already. I bet a lot of people feel the same way. And I wonder, Brian, is there any strain of that emotion happening inside your mind?
Well, it would be crazy to have some kind of feeling of a catharsis, or that we had somehow digested all this madness and that we were going in some kind of positive direction. And that'd be pretty insane, huh? Yeah.
But does it feel to you like the situation here domestically in the U.S., the situation's tight as a drum, right? No one can buy and sell houses on the housing market. Our fertility rate is collapsing as people feel like they can't have kids. We're just kind of stuck in a cul-de-sac, and we need something dramatic to shake up the Etch-a-Sketch, shake up the game board, flip the table so we can start the game again. No matter how you view yesterday's events, it's undeniably a major escalation in a conflict between Tehran and Tel Aviv, and hopefully it can just be maybe a drone war where they just fly drones at each other, and intercept. It could be and no flesh and blood person could actually be injured. Seems unlikely, too much to hope for, but I don't know. I do think that we in America have a karmic price to pay for saber rattling and meddling in the Middle East all these years. I mean, you cannot. It's not something that's gonna be. That's not something that we can manage. Those people have their own agency and their own passions and desires and their own hopes for the future, and we're not going to be able to just get our own way indefinitely and always have the last laugh. I think we have a deep karmic debt to pay for our misdeeds in the Middle East, and this could be what it looks like when it blows up in our face. Iran is not some crappy power like Iraq or Afghanistan. Iran is a serious power with serious Russian military technology. I don't know. Going to war with them will not be. It will not be business as usual. Invading Iraq and Afghanistan, people who are not in the military here on stateside could kind of go about their lives as normal, just with horrifying images on the news. But I don't think that. But Iran is a much more sophisticated power than either of those two, and I feel like we aren't going to be able to just live life normally here like we have since the Civil War. There's going to be actual consequences for America stateside, I think.
Well, what I'd like to do is get to a place where I can imagine that like James Bond is out there fighting the good fight instead of like breaking up, democratic socialist meetings.
Yeah, people who are like people trying to organize laborers in Central America so they can get a better pay, so they don't have to live in wretched huts, from the United Fruit Company. You get James Bond, blowing a poison dart into that guy's neck, But really, that's like not helpful. That just pads corporate profits. What we really need is we need a James Bond to go out there and take down the like the IMF and the World Bank, the rogue James Bond. Now that'd be a movie, right? A rogue James Bond is going to infiltrate the IMF, put a hurting on those guys. That'd be worth watching.
That would be excellent. See, that's the kind of art that we need, right?
Yep, yeah, it's just the sort of thing that Disney doesn't want to. They're just gonna double down on Ms. Marvel or whatever it is, and we're just not ever gonna have any art. They're just gonna like try to keep recycling that '80s and nostalgia, like comic books and just into like Star Wars until like the end of time. Yeah, it's just yeah.
Well, I guess like in the Civil War movie that's has come out, they really don't address the political reasons at all, and they have like Texas allying with California for some reason, which is completely insane.
Well, that's why, right? To make it not give people ideas, right? You're gonna make it a completely implausible political alliance, so you don't have people then act that art out. Yeah, that Civil War movie would be interesting. Maybe it really does reflect the actual reality of life in America. The fact that it's definitely significant that movie's coming out. Does it come out Friday? Is that what's happening? I think that's right.
It is out, I think.
Oh, it is out. Okay,
Yeah.
Maybe it came out this past Friday then.
I believe so.
Well, I'm going to have to give that an illegal pirate. That sounds like entertainment right there. We may not be able to have James Bond, strangling the SEC, we can't have him like fighting Gary Gensler at the SEC, but we can at least get a movie that has a civil war, even if it's a non-feasible political situation that they portray. Well, in other news, about 6 or 8 months ago, you may have heard there was like some feud between Elon Musk over at Twitter, or AKA X, and Substack. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, well, the guy who's doing the Twitter files, Matt Taibbi, he was. It seemed like he was simpatico with Elon Musk, but then, what he did is he banned Matt Taibbi from leaking into his Substack account.
Yeah, Taibbi leaked the text exchange between him and Musk, and it was truly bizarre. Like, I don't know what to make of Elon Musk. Some of the things he does I like, and other times he just seems crazy. Like that time he accused, remember when those children were trapped in an underwater cave and. It was like the Philippines or somewhere, and the authorities wanted to send an underground sub, and Elon Musk had his own idea, but they decided to go with not his idea, and so he accused the person running the show that had the idea with divers or whatever it was. He accused him of being like a pedophile or something, and then that guy sued Musk. It was just crazy. So sometimes crazy things happen. So point is, I type up my essays and put them on Substack, but still to this day, if you can, like, people who follow you can see your Substack links, but you won't appear in the For Me feed with your links if you link to Substack, and there's a few other ways that it deprioritize. There's a few other ways that Twitter may try to deprioritize Substack, but they've put an article editor and they allow you to subscribe to people on Twitter. In the past year, that's happened. So what's really going on here is Twitter's trying to X is trying to compete with Substack, and then the thing that touched it all off was what Substack put a note section that's a lot like Twitter. It's a lot like tweets, and so they're really in direct competition. So, I think I'm just going to try to rely on Twitter. There's also a feature on Twitter called Spaces. Have you ever tried a space on Twitter?
I've heard, let's see, Eric Weinstein got roasted by Tim Dillon on Spaces, I think is what happened.
Yeah, that's exactly. Was that Locals, maybe? Or maybe it was Spaces.
I think his ego never recovered. It was a big to-do at the time.
I mean, I think Eric Weinstein's the most interesting person to listen to. T-Mac always had this saying, you have you ever noticed that, people who are smarter than you can't even understand what they're saying? He was exhorting us all to have more confidence in our intelligence. Right? You're much smarter than you think you are. People, if you can understand what the person's saying, then they're not smarter than you. There are people smarter than us, but have you ever noticed? No, and that's how I feel about Eric Weinstein. I can pick up 75%, 80% of what he's saying, but he's on the frontier of who I could understand what they're talking about. So that makes him interesting to me. He's got a lot of good ideas, a lot of interesting ideas because a lot of it's calculus based. I think Eric Weinstein has that theory of everything, gauge theory, which we can certainly get into, but that will involve dimensionality, which is a huge rabbit hole left to go down. But locals is spaces is it's interesting when Iran is launching drones at the Israeli air defense system. You can find some pretty good reporters on spaces giving live updates, and so it's useful for that. X has a lot. It has Grok, which is a terrible AI. I think it's the worst AI I've used of all of them. Even Gemini seems better than Grok, but hopefully Grok will get better. But
you are paying like $7.95 a month, right?
Yeah, I'm paying. There's 2 tiers. I'm in the second tier, so I could even. So I have like a blue check mark and all that. But the conclusion I've come to is I'm going to try to use Twitter for my news more, and I think I can jigger it in a way where I get news from people I trust, like Whitney Webb or Abby Martin, people like not NBC, not the crazy, sponsored by Pfizer. So I'm also going to publish all of my articles on there using the new article editor. So I'm just going rather than using Twitter to try to pimp my Substack, I'm just going to simultaneously publish everything on both Substack and Twitter. And so I think I'll spend more time on that app and less time, especially on Reddit. I tried to post an article on Reddit I tried to post on Monday, April 1st, but the r/collapse community has they've gone to a move where like their mods have to like manually approve your articles. Anyway, one of the mods messaged me and was like, "Hey, today is like Big Scary Line Day, is celebration of April 1st. I could see where your article could fit, but do you want me to approve it, or would you rather wait for a different day?" I was like, let me just wait a week and to respect the theme day of r/collapse. So then I submit the next week, but then the article gets removed by the mods for Rule 7, which is which is low effort posts, but it's like a huge essay. Like they literally define it's like short videos or memes, right? That's what it says in the sidebar. And then, so the issue is that the real issue here is that this sub was talking about some of the limitations. This article was talking about some of the limitations of science, and people in r/collapse are devotees of the science cult, right? It's not like the minute that you say trust the science, you transform science from science into a religion, right? That's saying trust the science is a tautology. It doesn't make any sense at all. You don't do any trusting at all. That's what the word science means. At any rate, talking about some of the limitations of science in terms of their well, we've been through it a lot on this podcast, of course, but the idea is that science is limited by its assumption that there is such thing as an objective reality. In a Platonistic world, science is a limited tool. It can do wonderful tricks inside the matrix, but it doesn't help you with the significance of there being a matrix or anything outside the matrix. Anyway, there's some points like that in the post. So, what I'm trying to illustrate here is that just Reddit, even though I like the format from a consumption standpoint, where there's an article or a post or something, and then a bunch of comments about it that are ranked, which is much better than Twitter, it's like the mods are just out of their mind, especially since so many mods left after they turned off the API access to all of the third-party apps. You may recall over the summer of 23, that was a big hullabaloo. And so a lot of the subs refused to comply, and they refused to come. They shut down and protest and refused to come back. So a lot of mods got wiped and new mods installed, so that Reddit could have its IPO of last month.
Well, the heyday of Reddit certainly was the pre-2016 election, and it really has been astroturfed or politicized, and that mod power is just too big a deal. I mean, it used to be like random acts of pizza and rage faces, and unfortunately, we've fallen a long way from that. Yeah, I just can't really. You just can't. It's just so heavily controlled. Whereas Twitter is more Wild Westy than it used to be, thanks to the influence of Mr. Musk. So I think I'm going to spend much more time on Twitter and use that as primary. The other place I'd get my news is Crystalline Saga over at Breaking Point. I remember when Sidney Powell said she was going to release the Kraken in the aftermath of the 2020 election. Sidney Powell was this lawyer who was held in high esteem, right? And she was willing to say that she had slam dunk evidence that the 2020 election had been fraudulently stolen by Joe Biden. That's what she meant by release the Kraken. But then there wasn't really anything there, and she just got disgraced, so she just gave up her good name for the Donald. I don't know, but I really thought that. I was like, for a minute, I was like, wait, this could really happen. We could really see a legal challenge that overthrows the 2020 election here. But Crystalline Saga talked me off the ledge. They were like, the actual probability of that is so low, it's really not something to worry about, despite the fact this reputable lawyer is saying that they're. So they kept me on the straight, because I would have been much more of a, like,
I'm sure we've talked about it before, but like I thought that monkeying with the elections, well, everyone knew that that's something that we did in America. I didn't think that was at all. I thought the 2000 election between Bush and Gore, everyone knows that there was fuckery afoot there. Right? Everyone knows about Volusia County and hanging Chads, and everyone knows about Bernie getting the shaft in 2016 and 2020, right? Or everyone knows about JFK at the Chicago DNC and in 1960, right? It's not like the elections are definitely messed with. It just they're always messed with. Are they messed with enough to affect the outcome is the question. And I don't really see any evidence that that's the case in 2020. But I was thinking that Sidney Powell did have such evidence, and I was becoming very excited until the aforementioned Crystal saga set me on the straight and narrow.
Well, there's the monkeying within the rules, and then there's the monkeying outside the rules.
Yeah.
The footage of them putting up like their cardboard to block the windows of the vote counters, and then tons of boxes of ballots coming in after midnight, which apparently were like 99% Biden votes, is crazily sus. But nothing's ever been proven, so it is what it is.
Yeah. It doesn't surprise me at all, and I don't really necessarily believe that all of that turned the election. It seemed like a really close election, and it did have those optics of like the Donald being ahead when we all went to sleep, and then when we all woke up, it's actually going to be Joe Biden instead. That's really bad. It's a bad look, but it doesn't mean it's wrong.
Suppose that Donald Trump wins this election. You'd really have to lose your faith in the deep state as like a reputable bad actor, right? Yeah. If he manages to pull this off. And yet I just cannot fathom Joe Biden winning this election.
I can't really picture it either. I think the Gaza thing has really hurt him, which is awesome. It does feel to me, from my personal perspective, I spent 2010 to 2020 paying $12K a month on student loans and getting $2K a month in salary. So my life just made no sense at all, and I was like, there's something wrong here. And no one would really listen to that message in like 2011. To me, it feels like with Joe Biden being the principal architect behind banning private student debts from the bankruptcy courts. Besides Biden like personally ruined my life, so it was like easy for me to always be anti-Biden. But like everyone else has to see Biden in action before they can. All the other blue, no matter who people have to go. Oh, okay. Well, this person is not. This regime is horrible. There's no one to vote for that will not, make us support the Israeli war against Gaza. We don't have, not even RFK, not even voting there was gonna, get us out of paying for this insane war. So a lot of people are waking up anyway. It's good to feel that. See, I've always been at the bottom of the well, and it's good that now everyone's down here with me. Much more comforting, much better. It was very isolating and cold in 2011, but now this is where the party's at.
I don't think there's any chance that we're going to get a debate between Biden and Donnie Trump, sadly. So we're not going to get that entertainment.
There's no way, right? There's no way that would be good for the Biden team. What is he going to... He's just going to... the best they could hope for is a stalemate. I don't know. Joe Biden is noticeably slower and noticeably less alert than he was in 2020. I just can't imagine how a debate would go. I'm sure they're going to do everything they can to prevent that from happening. Maybe make fun of the Donald for having too many court dates so we can't do a debate or some strategy like that. It's got to be, right? They're not going to wheel out Joe Biden like Hannibal Lecter on that crazy dolly with a mask on and wheel out Joe Biden and give him a shot in the arm and send him out for a debate. I can't, someone made the point, I can't remember who, but all of the blue, no matter who people were like cheering that Joe Biden made it through the State of the Union at the end of, and didn't crap himself or pass out or anything, he actually he had a few stumbles, but he made it. Well, a debate is way harder than just reading a speech. There's just no, I just can't pick, if they were enthused that he made it through a speech, they must really dread his performance in a debate, I would think, but who knows? I'm not a political apparatchik. I know nothing of these things. That's just what I personally would guess.
Joe Biden sure is an avatar of the system, and he's this crazy zombie up there. And someone has to go there and pump him full of drugs, the doctor on the wall there, and get him going there, get him through the show.
Just a little pinprick.
And the thing is, he is up there like a fascist dictator marching around, and
the unvaccinated are in for a cold winter of death and misery. Are we really? I guess I had the vax, but I just count myself among the anti-vax people. I don't know, but yeah.
All right. Well, is there still a broader point to be made about Twitter?
No, I was going to ask you. You had mentioned that you had switched from Spotify back to YouTube Music, but man, I tried going back to YouTube Music, but their interface is so busy, and the things I do on YouTube Music affect the YouTube side. So I think I'm going to carry on with Spotify. I also really appreciate their they have the best podcast interface out of any of the, like Apple Music or even Pocket Casts from the back end. Really, Spotify is like the best for posting podcasts and manipulating your content. And so I don't know. I appreciate Spotify much as I appreciate Twitter publishing the Twitter files and not accepting. Presumably, they claim to not be allowing the State Department or any other government agency to command them and make them take posts down or promote this post or whatever, all of the interference that went on with the Twitter files. So I appreciate that Spotify was willing to give Joe Rogan a platform, even when he was controversial, and they did take a bunch of his shows down, didn't they? I don't love that, but there's some weird things with Twitter I don't love either, but I do appreciate at least that Twitter and Spotify and Rumble are hosting the content that I actually want to see instead of the corporate schlock that's on YouTube.
I definitely get some crazy things under my For You suggestions, like under Twitter. I mean, it's lots of fights and people getting killed and shocking videos that are definitely not healthy to watch.
Yeah. I try to stay away from the For You feed and stick with the following feed because I can really control what I see better there. The For You feed promotes infinite scrolling. You just end up, and that's really, I think that's bad for the brain. I really try to not infinitely scroll. Of course, I fall into it sometimes. But really, if you're like bored, we used to be that before the advent of the cell phone, there would be days where you'd just be bored. You remember those days where you were actually bored? No more, because you've got the infinite scroll on the gram or on Twitter or TikTok or whatever it may be to keep you engaged constantly, keep your brain chattering away. Maybe that's not good.
Well, we're kind of in this constant state of dopamine overload now, and it's like a different kind of boredom.
Yeah, it is. It's a desert in its own right, isn't it? Yeah. So I think I'm gonna just roll forward with Spotify. Another villainous app, or another app that has a villainous reputation online, is Robinhood. I really like Robinhood. I think it's awesome. I mean, obviously they're paying for order flow, so obviously you get a little bit ripped off every time you buy or sell anything on their platform. But it's a really easy way to invest for your future and buy stock. And I have a brokerage account, my checking, and I just use their debit card. And
do you have a Robinhood Gold credit card?
I'm on the waiting list, but that thing only just came out.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. 3% across the board is an unbelievable offer for the credit card, and it also looks like it'll be really good for traveling. Now, my go-to credit card now is Amazon Prime card, which has been outstanding for traveling. But I just don't really do much business with Amazon at all anymore. The rewards, the 5% rewards aren't really all that enticing. 3% across the board would be much better. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't, like, I'm leery about having a lot of money, like, in their Bitcoin, like, buying Bitcoin on Robinhood. I got no idea what I'm actually buying. But if you just are appropriately suspicious of them, you can use them. You can use Robinhood. Just be aware you're dealing with a villainous entity and don't expect much from their customer service.
Well, buying Bitcoin has definitely been on the... Robinhood's been a solid strategy for me. It's really the only thing that's worked.
Everything else has been quite futile and a lot of swings and misses.
I would definitely stay away from the day trading. And, well, I'm sure that Robinhood, they're like buying Bitcoin on their end to kind of match what generally goes on with the index. And I guess I don't worry too much about it. I suppose what could happen, there's always this fear of like some kind of cyber attack, right? You wake up and your Robinhood account. Your Robinhood account just says 0. That'll be awesome.
Well, I did have $4K stolen out of my Robinhood account from a skim when I went traveling to Florida. There must have been a skimmer on one of the super sus gas stations I stopped at. But I got a bunch of charges from WeChat, Shenzhen in China, and a bunch of crazy charges in India. But Robinhood did reverse them all. So I guess it took them 2 weeks, but they did, and you can't really get anywhere trying to chat with them. But eventually their processes worked their magic, and the cash was all restored to my account. So that was nice.
God bless the folks at Robinhood.
Yeah. I don't know. I really. So I'm just going to try to stay. Try to minimize the number of apps that I have to pay monthly subscriptions for, and just kind of do my thing in Twitter and on Spotify and with Robinhood, and try to eschew some of these others, like Amazon, some of these other services. They're just not Yeah, there's just too many of them, and there's too many monthly subscriptions you can get caught up with. Gotta purge the roster. All right. Well, this is usually the part where I encourage people to check out our to send us mail. Well, first of all, you can check out my essays at not.substack.com. I have all kinds of essays about history and finance and magic and dimensionality. And lots of exciting stuff there. And also, we would love to receive an email from our listeners that maybe it's critical. If you send us a note, we will be sure to read it on the air. You can send us a note at nop@substack.com. Please do. Also, I made a little redesign to the podcast artwork. I don't know if you noticed, Brian.
I did not.
For some reason, it's not coming through on Pocket Casts. It's not like refreshing. When I go behind the scenes, I see the right artwork. But if you look at the specific episode, you should see it. It just looks a little bit different. Thought it was a refreshing upgrade. I think I'll also order us some business cards. One for the pod, one for the essays. You can hand them out and pimp it to people. And I think we should also be thinking about things we can do to get people's attention. Like I think our pod's going to start maturing here now that we're at episode 31. And so I think, maybe around episode 50, we should start thinking of ways to get to curate and attract attention.
We could super glue ourselves to the highway.
Yeah, well, see, something like that is just what we need. Like something like that would really get a lot of attention online. So put your mind on that, and we'll do it all again next week on another exciting episode of System Failure. Brian?
All right. Sounds good.
Have a good week. We'll see you, everyone. Bye-bye.